Howdy, folks. Windy City Thetan Watch. We're in the studio today. Today, we're going to be joined by our friend Mona, Fat Grammy, again. And we're going to talk a little bit about how the police have behaved here in the city of Chicago. And then there has been a recent meeting that the police had, and Mona attended remotely to that. So before we get started with that, let me go ahead and play the intro.
We won't let them take control. Guard the streets and guard your soul. When you see things in watch, standing tall, we won't be caught. No cop gonna claim our town. In the breeze, we bring them down.
All right. Howdy, Fat Grammy. Great to have you here, Mona. Sorry, you know what? I don't actually know what you prefer to be called.
Fat Grammy is fine. And there's a story behind Fat Grammy. So
Yes,
it's
please.
not a bad thing. It's just, it happens to be when I was just a little kid, probably 7, 8 years old. You know how everybody always say, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, my answer truly was to be an international corporate lawyer, or my favorite person in the world, my fat grandma. So I've accomplished one, and that's okay. I am a fat Grammy, and that's all right. So that's the story behind it.
I love that story. That's awesome. That's great to hear. Um, Glad to have you here. There's a couple, we've got kind of the agenda for today is I want to set the stage by saying that, right, we've seen some police inequity in the way that they're doling out justice and the way that they're defending the law here in Chicago, especially as it pertains to Scientology versus the demonstrators of Scientology. Then we'll probably see, we'll watch those videos a little bit later on, and then I want to talk about the conversation or the meeting that the Chicago Police Department held, and that you and a couple other people that are members of your channels and subscribers, people who participate in our channels at that point. But
Absolutely.
excellent, excellent. Before we really get started, I just want to remind everybody that Boobgate, Boobtology, however you want to talk about it, Nance Drew will have court again tomorrow. It does appear, I've seen that we've had some community, she's had a couple of community posts out there. If you do have the desire and you have the ability, please make sure that you're visiting Nance's page and see if you can help. Please help and do whatever you can. So do whatever you can to help with that. She will be in court tomorrow. Her objective really is to make sure that she can actually litigate tomorrow. She doesn't want to have to continue if she doesn't have to. So let's see here. I think that what we'll start with is, and I think you've seen these videos before, but I've kind of compressed them a little bit, but just to show the behaviors of the Chicago police. And I did see, you know, folks, if you can if you're at home on the computer, watch on two channels. Give both of us some watch time. We would really appreciate it. The other thing I would ask is make sure that you're subscribing to both of the channels. I think we'd really appreciate that. Let me see here. I need to do some housekeeping in the background real quick.
Thank you guys for watching us both. It'll give me some hours. I'm almost up to the 3,000. Yay.
That is awesome.
So, yeah.
It's strange when you watch it kind of climb up there. You know it's going to happen because it's just slowly progressing that way. But it is always awesome that when you finally hit that point. And again, I just want everybody to be very aware that none of us is getting wealthy off of this. I don't know of any channels, minus maybe Aaron, maybe Natalie, who aren't upside down in regards to their investment in trying to challenge this cult, the cult of Scientology. That you get pennies back if you're talking about AdSense. None of us has sponsors that I'm aware of. None of us has sponsors. We really appreciate whenever you can do anything in regards to the super elements that are out there. That's helpful to us. It really is this idea of we we want to do whatever we can to recoup cost. That's going to be the best way of saying it. Um, let me change back over here. And I'm going to bring to stage this video. I'm going to guess on the dates. This is probably just after Memorial Day. I don't think it was Memorial Day happened just a little bit before this, but this is just after Memorial Day. And we're going to see a lot of demonstrators out there today. We're going to see, you're seeing the back of Never and Nana here. Free Zunu Project is here. I think that we're
It
going to
was
see
part of my
Juanita.
complaint. I think it was May 25th was
Okay.
the
Oh, it
day.
was. Okay. Excellent. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Juanita and Korn were also here this day. And so what's happened at this point is the demonstrators have on prior days been told they can't hang things on the tree, they can't hang things on the sign, it's city property, it's destructive. There is an ordinance. I don't recall what the ordinance is. I'm going to say I can hear Mona clicking in the background. She might be looking that up. But there's an ordinance that says we can't hang things on sign poles. And I would say that it's not always administered quite evenly in that process, but there is an ordinance out there that says you can't do that. So what's happened here is Never In has just put these signs on the ground, right? They're out of the natural pathway of the sidewalk. They are on the sidewalk, but they're out of the natural pathway of the sidewalk. And the police have been called because Scientology doesn't like when people are showing truths about their organization. All right, I'm going to let this roll real quick.
Today, we shine a spotlight on a troubling pattern of behavior by the Chicago Police Department, specifically focusing on Sergeant Dolan, badge number 1779, and his officers. This narrative unveils 3 egregious instances where Sergeant Dolan and his team prioritized the interests of the cult of Scientology over the First Amendment rights of peaceful protesters.
So what we saw there was, right, the intro to that is the officer picking up those signs, which, by the way, it feels odd that they're able to do the work of a private citizen in that regard, right? That it's not the police's responsibility, in my opinion. And again, it's just my opinion. I'm not a lawyer. I've never seen them on TV or anything like that. But it seems suspect that A, he's picking up those signs, but B, you just saw a clip there. I think we've all seen the clip. He walked into the Church of Scientology. He walked out with a bucket. He put water on that chalk. The best way that I've always, the idea that he's carrying Scientology's water, and it's like literally
That's true.
carrying
Literally.
Scientology's water in this space. Do you
It actually
know?
wouldn't have surprised me if he would have had a broom and scrubbed it himself. That was silly.
Absolutely. It it's disheartening to see that's what that officer believes to be an appropriate use of their time. Understand, he's heard us talk about what the crimes and abuses of this organization are, and he is still standing up to defend them on taxpayer time and taxpayer dollars.
I have heard from several officers talking about how sometimes there's a fine line between the freedom of religion and the freedom of speech and how they're both First Amendment rights. And I get that. But you also have a color of law line that divides that. You don't do it yourself. You, you don't inhibit the freedom of speech or the freedom of religion. It would be like them coming out and yelling, Scientology's a cult. It's exactly the same thing on our side of it. So there is that fine line, and they need to keep themselves neutral.
It and that's the part that pains me the most, right? And I can't tell you whether I agree with your assessment of that I think there are legal standings that say you cannot do that. I'm just disgusted that I'm a citizen of this city And my objective out here is to protect my city against the nefarious activities of this cult. And the taxes which I pay are being used to help enforce the rights or position. And I don't think they're the rights of Scientology. They don't have the right for people to come and clean up the sidewalk behind them. But
No.
the desire, to placate or soothe the Scientology people in regards to, yeah, get them off our backs, please.
Correct. And on my page, on my community tab, or on the description of this video, I've got a link if you would care to make a complaint against that officer to the OIG. I've got links for where you can do that.
Is that Office of Investigator General?
It is OIG.
Okay,
Mhm.
nice. Um, and but I've made this statement before, folks. Don't think that the person next to you in chat is going to make that complaint. Please make the complaint. It's not overly challenging. It can be done anonymously. You
Yes.
don't have to do anything. You don't have to. There is no arduous labor to it. You just have to do it, right? Um,
I
okay.
honestly, I made those 3 complaints all in one. I probably should have separated them out, but I was really under time constraint on Friday. One was against the officers that arrested Nancy, 2, the, how they treated her, and then 3, this gentleman, this officer. So those were 3 different complaints that I made all in one, and I did with my name, but you can do it anonymously.
Yeah. And again, you really shouldn't be fearful of doing it with your name. I'm just going to say that some people are uncomfortable having that out there. I will say that I don't really love that Scientology has information on me. I don't care that the police have information on me. I have a license, right? A driver's license.
Mhm.
If the police wanted to find out who I am, there's any number of reasons how they can figure that out on this process in this process. I don't want to open up an attack surface for Scientology. I don't want to make anything easy for them in these situations, right?
True.
And I would, kind of that you said you blended the report together, and I felt that, I just got back my first acknowledgement of my FOIA request. They said, yes, we've received it, and here's what you're asking for. And I asked for everything on one form. And I'm always worried about the idea that they're going to find one niggle problem on one of the issues and say, we're going to deny this. And it's not that hard. Now that I understand what it is, that I just have to go in there and fill out the piece of paper, I'm going to go get the piece of paper. I'm going to make 100 copies of it so that I can just always have them at home, fill them out, and drop them
Exactly.
off in that space. So now, what Mona was talking about, the officer we saw in the first, let me see if I'm on the right. So let me see if I guess. So this officer, his name is Officer Dolan, right? And there's been a couple of other incidents with him. On the day that I was, that they kind of cried about my chalking there, Officer Dolan was there. When I asked him to identify, he would not identify. A couple of weeks later, Friesinu was there. Dolan's came from across the street and just yelled. He just yelled over the Friesinu project and said, "You can't do that." And Friesinu was like, "Well, what are you going to do about it, right? What is your recourse? Get out of your car, jerk! Come over here if you're gonna be a law enforcement officer. Come over here and show me you're a law enforcement officer." A little while later, a Scientologist came out, went across the street, and was talking to Dolan. And I eventually said, "Well, wait a second. If he's over there talking to him, I'm just going to go over there, and at the very least, I'll tell the Wall of Fire to get the Scientologist to have to leave the area." And then I asked Dolan for identification again, and he said, "What? What? Why? Why do you need that?" And I said, "I know your name's Officer Dolan." "Great. Then why'd you ask me to identify?" I said, "Because it is your policy that you must identify when a citizen asks you to identify. It doesn't matter if the citizen already knows your name. If they asked you to identify, you have to identify." Sorry, I feel like I'm stealing everything from you. Um, so that's kind of how this Dolan guy is. There is no way to think that he is not pro Scientology or in some way in bed with the members of Scientology.
And
Um,
it's not like he's a young guy. He's an older
right,
gentleman. He has to have been on the force for quite a while.
absolutely. Yep.
No, and Jet Mechanic Girl, no, he is not a member of Scientology. He's a police officer. He's
Yeah.
Chicago police officer.
Yep. And that's not to say that you can't be both, but you can't be both at the same time, right? That he is wearing a uniform. He is therefore obliged to be acting as an official, as an officer in this particular instance, right? He can be a Scientologist. He cannot be doing Scientology's work while he's on duty, right? Let me kind of scroll up again, look at some of those other, some of the other chats, right? See that Karen jumped over to your channel, give you a like, folks.
She
Put
did,
likes on both
yes.
channels.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Karen. And I'm going to be really honest and confess, it is so hard for me to chat on my channel and as well be on the StreamYard. So I'm sorry. I'm so sympathetic. I'm so sorry that it's hard for me to chat over there.
No,
Besides the fact that then you hear me tapping, and that isn't cool either. So
but I have no issue with it. And do what's comfortable to you, right? Um, I agree with this. That yeah, I can't imagine that the city of Chicago is any way happy about the idea that this guy is doing this work, right? Under color of law.
right, and I'm going to get a little bit more after we get to the meeting. I'm going to talk a little bit about this because the superintendent had different ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nance, great seeing you. And yep, I can't imagine that this guy isn't under internal affairs investigations 24/7. Now, while that sounds awesome, great, he's under investigation by internal affairs, you have to make an egregious violation of policy in order for anything to come from an internal investigation. That historically, Chicago police have protected their own, right? In most of these situations, I don't know a lot of places where, or a lot of times where people have been satisfied by their complaints to an internal investigations group or an internal
Right.
affairs group.
Yeah, a lot of the organizations, the fire department, the police departments are all what's called safe pointed. And so they have people on the inside of those organizations that um, basically are yes man. And when they call, because they know they give so much money and so many funds that they need to do what Scientology is asking of them.
Yeah, those are some of the things that people often ask, well, why are they doing what Scientology asked them? It is highly unlikely there is a quid pro quo. Like there's not, it's not that likely that there's an envelope with $5,000 in it that the officer goes in and picks up. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. I'm saying that's probably not what's happening here. What usually it is that they're finding out a way of, just like they try to find ruins, they try to find out what are the things that make you happy. So this person, this is a hypothetical. This is not the fact. He's got a wife. His wife might be part on a board of a charitable group, and all of a sudden that charitable group is getting funding for whatever they're going after in this situation. And Scientology
Hmm.
makes it known that that's what's happening here. He might be a coach on a little league team, and all of a sudden the little league team has a new set of uniforms. or has a new award or a new trophy that they're able to put in a trophy case. It's these small things, and they look like they're petty, but that's how they're able to get around the idea of, we never paid this guy any money. We didn't tell him to do this, right? We did it in a very round. Well, they're not going to continue
They
on this
always
part.
try and keep that degree of separation. I
Yep.
know with LA, they give to the LAPD Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization, and I'm sure Chicago has the same thing,
Yep.
to where there's a degree of separation where Church of Scientology isn't exactly lobbying for anything. They're giving to a nonprofit organization, and they happen to be giving to the police foundation or the police department. So yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, the where else in Boston, I remember it was the police veterans of police or and wives of police, those types of organizations. And those are usually very fraud. If you ever look at those organizations, they're incredibly fraudulent because you are giving under the guise that you're helping out the fire department, you're helping out the police department, but you find out that none of this money really goes to anything of that nature. It is just a fraudulent usurping of, or it's stolen valor, I guess might be what you
Right.
would
And if you
consider.
research their 990s, which is their federal form, tax filing form, like ours is 1040s for individuals, 990s are a nonprofit's federal filing form for the IRS. They have to show who the contributors are behind the scenes, but they don't have to show to the public who the contributors are. So you have no way of assessing whether there's bad money coming in or not.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I really dislike about that is that no matter how much you try to set up a positive system, there will be people that are going to do whatever they can to poke holes in
Mhm.
it and to use it against what its intended purpose was. And it's so challenging. Why would we not want charitable organizations? And then you find out that, darn it, all of these charitable organizations are cheating. So now I'm no longer feeling comfortable or confident in order to offer money to these charitable organizations.
Certainly puts a kibosh on the trust factor though, huh?
Right. 100%. Yep. This is so Peter, right? A complaint should be filed by Danny against, and it's not Sergeant Harris, it's Commander Harris, and I'll come back to that in just a second. And he was told to shut up, not one word, or who would arrest him. And this was something that I think that we would have seen video on this on Shannon's channel, or even Danny's channel would have shown it more closely. It's not Sergeant Harris. This is Commander Harris. He holds the highest position of District 1. At the end of the day, you've got in Chicago, the top cop is called the superintendent of police. That's
Larry
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 Snelling. Larry
Snell,
Snelling.
yes.
Yep. Thank you. Larry Snelling is the current superintendent. He has an administrative staff, but then when you get down to the actionable police arm, they are broken down into districts. So the one level below the superintendent is going to be a commander at one of these places. Now there's chief of detectives and all of those other types of organizations. But when you talk about the actual rank and file, this commander is the de facto boss of District 1. What he says goes in this situation.
How many districts are there?
I think there are 18. Um, it's 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 pretty big because that Chicago's a large area. Now, District 1 is the south side of the loop and a little bit out from there. If you got to the north side of the loop, like you get to Mag Mile, I don't think that's District 1 anymore.
Okay.
So there's quite a few of them. If you look on the Citizens app, that's usually what you could also just look up the Chicago police precincts. But that's usually what I use to do that. And the reason I care about that is that there's less less available radio frequencies than there are districts. So there'll be one radio frequency and two districts will share that.
Okay.
Particular
So
radio
what org is District 1, the org?
Yes,
Okay.
the org is in District 1. The ward, darn it, I'm gonna miss this one. There's two numbers that stick in my mind. There's a lot of wards in Chicago. So this ward, I thought it was 39. I can't remember, and it's been a long time since we've been kind of rallying against him because we were so disappointed by how he presented on the opening day. This this Commander Harris, one of the things that's really, really challenging about him is that he is a fairly well connected and very powerful person. That if you were to go to the one of the people who's is a demonstrator has gone and tried to put an internal complaint against them. And they say, "Oh yeah, we take internal complaints." Okay, what did he do? Yep, we take all kinds of. Yeah, who is it? Oh, it's Commander Harris. Oh, we can't take that. And it makes sense in the police structure that you can't do that because no way in the world that anybody's going to take a complaint against a supervisor in that situation. But the other thing that we found really strange is we also went to the state's attorney, and the state's attorney said, "Yep, I can take a complaint of that nature. Yep, great. Oh, Commander Harris, I can't take that complaint." And there should be enough separation there that the state's attorney is in no way obliged to Commander Harris. So why is he unable or fearful to take that kind of a complaint?
Right. And I know that is where the OIG does, the board in the OIG takes those.
Excellent. No,
Right.
I like
And
that.
to address a question, Jack of Trades, it seems like a learning curve that new Scientologists must have substantial amount of money. Therefore, the only people that make it through must have substantial income. True for the public. So the curve says no poor. Poor or less money, less income means you either go on staff and sign a 2.5 or 3 year or 5 year contract, or go into the Sea Org to pay for your courses and services. And so as long as you stay on staff or in the Sea Org, you have zero debt for your courses or auditing sessions. But if you leave, that's when they hit you with that that
Freeloader.
debt, the freeloader debt. Yep. So thank you for asking that question.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons, one of the things that I think my forte or something that I think most people know me for is that I tend to go and I try to stop the recruiting out on at the street level. And people say, well, why do they engage people who maybe look low income? And it really is that they're looking for that free labor wing, right? That everybody has value to Scientology. Now they don't understand the value of Scientology or anything of that nature, but they will burn up or use anything they need to. So if they find a person who is in need or down on their luck, and they kind of say, "Hey, we can get you a job," that person might say, "Oh, I like that idea." Right. And now all of a sudden you're going to sign a billion-year contract thinking that you've got free and easy street in that regard. So that the idea that they only court wealthy people is probably incorrect. Now, would they like more wealthy people? Yes.
Exactly.
This one, I always like this. I use the Chase Wave as one of my examples of their financial fraud because it's so easy to find information on the Chase Wave. But that's another one of the tactics that Scientology has done in the past. They have so much information on their members that they will open up credit cards in their names, run them up, and then just default on them. So Chase will not allow any Scientologist to sign up for a credit card anymore.
Nor
just because
American Express, either one.
nice. Yeah. What else did I see there? Oh, there was another one, just police wise, and who was it? Never in Nana, right? That this again is a Commander Harris statement. Commander Harris is one of the people who told people that they were in a private alley and they had to get off of that alley on the opening day. So he was really whether he was being steamrolled by Scientology or he was trying to assert authority, he was absolutely incorrect, and he probably violated some civil rights in regards to pushing people off of these particular private areas. The alley, I would say that there is a possibility, and we keep on looking at all the geographical surveys. Nothing shows that it's private, but even if it was private, it's at least a thoroughfare for, darn it, not a thoroughfare. When I put power lines through a property,
An easement?
an easement. Thank you. At the very least, it's an easement, a public easement, because the trash is taken up in the alleys. So there has to be a conveyance that allows people to go through there. Additionally, unless there's a signed piece of paper from the property owner that the police cannot enforce on behalf of the property owner. It's the property owner who has to ask the police to, well, the property owner can tell you to get off, or has to go and ask the police to do that.
Right.
So there was a bunch of illegality or illegal activity was going on there. But again, after the fact, the ward alderman was somebody who really said something stupid. Well, we're going to look really tough at all the rest of your permits. I was like, they're never going to have a grand opening again. Why? Why do you think they would never submit a permit again? They have no reason to submit a permit, so they don't care that you're going to examine the rest of their permits very carefully. So, let me see if I want to pull this over real quick. We're going to see Sergeant Makarsky. And Makarsky was the one that when I paused the screen earlier, who you're going to see. Let me kind of back this up a little bit. So this, oh, that doesn't look like the right. Oh, I know why.
That was earlier in the day, wasn't it?
This was actually Memorial Day.
Oh, okay.
Before the sun pulled the
So on Memorial Day, oh, sorry, let me pull that off on Memorial Day, I got out real early. I was up there before, I wanted to get there before their members would start walking in, because as you can see, I'm right in front of the doorway there with the chalk. And I didn't want to obstruct people's paths, because I understand that would be something that is illegal, right? I can't obstruct people from moving about here. But if I'm there before they get there and I put the chalk on there, great. This is the DSA. She came out, she doxed me. So before this day, nobody knew my name on the channels, or I would say nobody really knew my name. And doxing isn't really the appropriate term. She just unveiled my anonymity at this point in time. And she came out and, teasing me like, oh, you must be a child with chalk. What are you writing this on here? And she's going to dump water on here. This officer comes by and it's like, yeah, I don't see anything
the crowds
wrong
onto
here.
the streets
Right.
before anyone could claim I was obstructing the path. My plan was simple and respectful: to sketch out the facts in bold, unmissable letters on the pavement,
It's not a church,
ensuring
it's a
not
cult,
a
let's be
single
honest.
pedestrian would have to sidestep the truth, or quite literally, me.
So
But
the
even
church
in this
doesn't like
careful
art.
planning, what unfolded next was baffling.
They believe in
Here I
space
was,
fantasy.
giving this
So
cult
we're
all the
prisoners of this
space in the
planet.
world,
76
physically
trillion years ago.
and
That's my bag, thank
metaphorically.
you.
Yet,
76
what
trillion.
came freedom of speech?
So here's kind of when things start rolling. So Makarsky comes. So this officer's first on scene, right? He's the one called to scene. He calls a supervisor to come out.
Right here in the heart of our city.
One of the individuals that was out here yesterday, not you,
Right.
but on video, was pushing the boundaries of what is acceptable as far as someone's personal space.
I fully agree with that.
And when you come within someone's personal space too close, they can feel threatened.
Yep.
They can defend themselves.
I understand that.
So, I'm not saying you were involved in any way or have any knowledge of it.
But I like that you're encouraging physical violence as an element.
Well, no, I'm saying that if someone feels threatened,
Right.
they have a legal justification to defend themselves.
Right.
You do, as well as anybody
Couldn't
else.
I right now claim that I feel threatened?
So what's happened here, if you're not following the story there, he's telling me that he's seen on the video, not me, but others have done something wrong. And I'm going to say that I've seen people rob banks. So should I talk to the entire population and say you're not supposed to rob banks, right? Or should I tell people that are doing something wrong? Only if you're doing something wrong would I encourage you not to do something wrong. But I'm getting a little bit fed up about this little dissertation that he's giving me, or we call it cop-splaining, right? He's telling me, don't do this, don't do the other in regards to what's going on. This is Officer Makarsky. He also was one that earlier when I put the chalk down. He says, yeah, you can put the chalk down. Then he came back later and says, oh, it says you're marking the sidewalk. So marking, they considered marking to be putting chalk on the sidewalk. I believe that everything else in that particular ordinance shows permanent damage to the property. So marking, scarring, hashing, it's permanent, and marking in this very wide sense of the term. You're going to see that he's there. This is Officer Dolan again, right? There's what? At the end of this episode, there were 6 officers surrounding me because there was chalk on a sidewalk, right?
Can you imagine the cost to the city for this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Now, this is something that's going to happen a little bit later on. Let me see if I can do that. Sorry, I'm fumbling around with this. If you can see, I'm going to have I'm going to have 3 angles of this particular image. The person that's in the blue with the blue hat, we know her. She's somebody who had a very hard time on opening day. She's always had challenge. Scientology has always kind of pushed her around. She was a resident in the dorm next door. She no longer is a resident at that particular dorm. But you see walking towards us a woman in pink. In the lower picture, she's got her hands in her pocket. She's of European descent, Eastern European descent. During the day, I was following her. She was body routing, and I would go ahead and capture her documents. So she's about to come up to me. I didn't really see what was going on in real time, but when she comes up to me, the reason that she's got a voice recording of the Chicago Ordinance of Stalking. So she's going to play for me a recording, and it's mostly because she can't speak English. She couldn't speak English well enough to tell me this particular element. Mm-hmm. But she's going to approach. By the way, the woman Moth is who we call her, and that's her name. She's going to yell in here, but you're going to watch as this person comes forward. So she's definitely invading my space. At this point, she's just trying to talk to me. I don't even know that she's there because I'm looking forward. You can now see her reach into my face. I step back, she steps forward. I step back again, she steps forward again. So that keeps on happening. To me, that is precisely what Officer McCarsky warned me not to do. I don't see it any other way. Later on, the police will come, and I showed them this video, and they're like, oh, she's not doing anything wrong there. Like, what? How do you justify your policing one way, but not policing the other way, right? That it's just incredibly biased the way that they
totally situational.
Process. Yep, absolutely. Now they'll kind of go through here, and I don't really want to play this. If you want to, it's definitely on the channel later on. I'll put the links in this chat, but. This is the behavior that we as demonstrators keep on seeing, that we're not getting rational minds on both sides of the coin when we're going through this. All of that is mostly to say that Chicago has these open forums where you can go and make your complaints or voice your concerns about how Chicago does its policing. And this past week, Mona and several others joined in one of these calls. And at this point, I want to say, what was it and how did it go? If that's the best way of saying it.
Sure. It was the Chicago Board of Police. And it is a combination of, it's basically the same as the LAPD commission. It's the COPA, COPA,
Right.
the OIG, the Office of Inspector General, the Board of Police, the police superintendent, and I believe they have 9 members on their board, which are appointed by the mayor, and they represent, and 4 have to be attorneys. I was just reading through what they were, and they have to represent the citizens of Chicago. So it is a place for people to go to be able to approach and have information about what's happening police-wise. So they are an arm that provides oversight of the police department.
Okay.
The combination of all of those offices.
Do they have teeth?
They do have teeth in the way of they can they recommend, especially for like the appeal of the hiring process. So that's where all the appeals for the hiring process go if people are not hired or not selected for the police department, they can go there to appeal that. But because OIG and the board is together, that is where you can go to make complaints, to make it known, to find out where to go and what to do. So they provide policy and procedure of the police departments.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It it does. Now again, they make the recommendation with a full throat, and then it still is kind of up to the police whether or not they're going to take that recommendation.
Well, if they don't, then you can always go to OIG
Okay.
or file directly against. So it's the policy and procedure arm of it. It's where statutes come from. So
Okay.
it definitely has
Yeah.
teeth. It's just not, they're not going to be the ones to fire an officer.
Okay. Gotcha. And there's many of you had mentioned that this organizations of this nature usually happen or exist in many of the larger urban areas, right? Where the police forces are large, right? In that
Right.
space and need that kind of oversight. You're probably not going to see this in a town of 450 people when there's 3 police officers. This is not the way that those things get solved, right?
Probably not. And I think the board's other relative jurisprudence is a force. What do you call it when it's too much force?
Oh,
It's like when people
excessive force
excessive
or
force,
yeah.
right? So they run policy and procedure in excessive force issues.
Okay, that that makes sense. Then are they part of so usually in excessive forces, there's usually going to be a suit brought forward and a decision-making process, and usually those settle with some dollar amount. Sometimes if it gets corporate, if they settle with a dollar amount, is this the
Right.
group that's involved in trying to figure out what that should it be something that they should pay out and what that might be?
They do have, I don't remember exactly how they get into that, but they do have some response to that. I think more so they have jurisdiction over, as I said, the policy and procedure of excessive force. And so, an example, I'll just give a quick one. There was a family there that was talking to the board of police because their son would have been, his birthday was the next day. So they were there to talk about, he was shot, he wasn't shot duly. I'm sure there is a case going through, but how policy and procedure should be changed because of his being shot unjustly. So
Okay.
those are the type of things that you would bring to this board.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. By the way, I definitely want justice and satisfaction for the person that was the primary reason why this occurs. But if change comes of it, positive, right? That's usually
Right.
a positive element, and it's hard to complain about the idea that improvement and I can't change history. I can only change the future, right?
Exactly.
So
And this was one step in that process.
cool. Um, One of the things that I'll say that I have as an example, and we see Audit LA or William, sometimes Jessica will be there, Serge, Michael, the LA forum where it's an interactive forum. Is that what this is, or is this a different type of forum?
It's actually the opposite. The LA Forum is LA has a Brown law, whatever it's called. It's a person that was last name was Brown, to where they cannot interact with you. They take comments, they take the information, and then they go back and they discuss it in the nether regions. I noticed that Chicago was interactive. People and they would thank them for their comment. They would give a response to their comment in some respects, and it was very pleasant. It was very nice. So some states do, some states don't. California is a no response state. Illinois obviously is.
Gotcha. Peter, thank you for being helpful, Peter. So the
Thank you,
Brown Act
Peter.
prohibits taking action on public comments at the meeting. Okay, interesting. Now that we kind of have set the backstage, what happened this week?
So at the meeting, they only took public comment from people that were there. They did not have the possibility to electronically or by Zoom give public comment, which was kind of a bummer, but it let me give you a compare contrast. LAPD commission was like a very large room with kind of like a judge's counter up front where all the people sat and people out in the audience. This was more like uh, a conference room
Okay.
where they had just regular conference tables set up, lunch tables, perhaps, those foldable tables.
Right.
And then they had people sitting in the audience. So it was more intimate. They had a stand-up microphone where people went up. I'm pretty sure you had to sign up ahead of time. In fact, I know you had to sign up ahead of time to speak. They called each person individually. Each person went up to the microphone. They waited patiently. Whereas in LA, they have the speakers present and they have speakers online and they have a 45-minute time frame to do public comment. They take one speaker there, one speaker online, and they go back and forth up to, and I think it was 3 minutes up to 45 minutes total. Chicago was 2 minutes speaking, in person only. It was very congenial. It was very pleasant. There was, as I said, interaction back and forth. LA has some very colorful language. Some I won't repeat because it's just dang nasty. More for the shock value, I think, than people trying to get information to the commission. Here, it was very informative. I don't think I heard one person even say shit. And maybe somebody did say shit, but they apologized for it.
Nice.
It was very respectful. Even people that were angry were very respectful. It was nice. Yeah, Goat Puppet. Sorry, Style Audit. I caught that one. Goat Puppet is a little bit colorful. We won't go there. But I didn't see any of that. And as I said, they even gave people that were using walkers or canes to get up to the to the microphone, time to get up there. They didn't have a time limit on people that were speaking. Well, they had 2 minutes, but I meant overall. So they didn't say, "Okay, we're gonna cut everybody off in 45 minutes."
Okay.
So and the, president of the board said, "We give you 2 minutes unless I feel otherwise or see a reason." So there was a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of leeway. So it was pleasant. It was pleasant. So for the structure of it, that was the structure of it. Now they had the president spoke, they opened the meeting, they, he gave time for the superintendent to speak, to give a report on everything. Of course, with the DNC that just happened, that kind of was a flare of a flavor of what he was talking about. He talked about how everything went really smooth, how all the districts worked well for the DNC, that they didn't really run into too many problems. He talked very proud, not just of that, but very proud of his sergeants and his officers. He spoke highly of his crew. He spoke highly of making sure that they were trained for over a year, that First Amendment right auditors that were their First Amendment right people were given the credits, they were given the room, they were given the platform as long as everything stayed cool. You know, they didn't take the protesters that were being too activist or feisty or unruly or violent. But he talked about how First Amendment rights was the utmost important, and they trained for a year for that. Now, to me, I took that as, hmm, that's important to him. First Amendment rights versus having his officers and his sergeants looked at with integrity and with valor was very important to him. That's what I took out of that.
Okay.
I
That's
don't
interesting. And
know
I'll
if
say this.
anybody else, if Peter or anybody else that were listening, and that's what I took from his statement.
Yeah. Yeah. So Peter in our in the chat, he also was on there. One of the things that I'll say is that I remember about 3 months ago that Commander Harris had put out a statement because for some reason, I think that his District 1 might extend out to the United Center, just because the way it's almost like gerrymandering the way that they draw those districts out. And he had mentioned that they were going to take a very hardline stance on protesters there, which seems exactly the opposite of at least the words that Snelling put forward, Snelling, the superintendent, put forward,
Mhm.
right? And again, that are they saying what people want to hear, or are they acting that way?
Maybe, but if you take the words out of it, his facial, and that's why I like going to these meetings. I know I'm
Right.
just a nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff. But if you took his facial features, his exclamation, his eyebrows, of how it was like a proud dad. And so when we're pulling us as First Amendment, as people that are demonstrating or protesting, however you want to say it, um, and knowing how he feels about that, or at least was giving the impression how he feels, that's something to key off from. When you're approaching them, when you're looking at them, they some of the commenters, well, first of all, they brought them food to put out in the lobby area so that way everybody could have cookies. Another speaker brought flowers for Snelling,
Right.
brought a bouquet of flowers to express how proud they were and how wonderful it was. And that's just a huge difference. So regardless of, if everything went to hell in a handbasket, behind the scenes, who knows? But that's the presentation. So when you go to comment or you go to make complaints or you go to make presentations on anything, you need to key off from that.
Yes. But sorry, and I shouldn't have said yes so quickly. I hope that everybody kind of just heard that. If the tenor of the meeting is blurting and blustery and fighting words and all of that, great. It makes sense. Try to join in that foray. But I'm going to say that what Mona's been describing here has been what everybody would say civil discord, right? Incredibly civil discord. And if that is the tenor of the meeting and you come in and you upset that tenor of the meeting, no matter how correct your message is, you've blown a hole in your argument because you've disrupted the conversation, you've disrupted the protocol of the meeting, and it's an implied protocol in that situation. I think it's an implied protocol that's going on there. So it's one of those things I tell people all the time that no matter how loud you yell at somebody, that doesn't make your point righter or wronger, right? So
Exactly. And honestly, to go up there and call them effing ends in the C word, and I've heard all of those words, believe me. And and I'm a white N and blah blah blah. I think I'm losing you.
no, I no, we're
There we
still
go.
good.
So sorry
Yeah.
about that. So to do all of that as a shock factor, I've been on the other side of this aisle. I've been on the other side of this desk taking public comment as a board person in the political arena. And honestly, when I hear that click, there I don't hear anything else you say. Not because it might not be valid, but because it's just wah 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 wah, and you lost me. So for shock value, great, whatever, but you didn't do a darn thing.
Yeah. I will say sometimes I've made a phone call to a complaint. Banks are one that I'll do it most often with fees, and I'll start very upset, and then I'll very quickly say, I apologize. I understand that you did not do this to me. I have a problem. I want to work through this problem with you, and I wish I could stop the first part, but I'm at least happy that I've recognized that I've done something wrong. And it's like, wait a second, I'm not upset with this person. I'm upset with the organization behind this person. But let me see if this person's going to help me. Right.
Right. And Twyla, I see your comment about that you're making faces because that's not behind the scenes. I'm not saying that's what's going on behind the scenes. It could be just a dumpster fire behind the scenes in the city and everything else. I'm just saying that's what was presented as the board to the board.
Right.
So, you just got to weigh it.
I agree. And by the way, I know that what the next date of one of these is. I'm not going to be available for that as well, but I will do whatever I can to see if I can get I want to have the in-room presentation or the in-room presentation, so that I can start voicing my concerns, or maybe even again as calmly as possible, disagreeing with some of the assertions that are being made in the room. Right.
One of the things that I took from this, from when the superintendent was talking, was that there's an opportunity to get in front of him as you and maybe a couple other people, and I'd be more than happy to do Zoom, like if you were to do a meeting,
Right.
about educating him about the First Amendment demonstrators and why you're doing it. It's a perfect opportunity.
Yep.
He's trying to make it look so darn good that that's a good opportunity to get in front of him and say, "Can I just have a half hour or an hour of your time? Can we just come present to you?"
Yeah. Do you think it's best to say, let me find a public email? Because I assume that there was a public email, probably superintendent at chicagopolicedepartment.com, and reach out that way? Should I be making phone? What would do you have guidance on how I might try and reach out to do that?
Well, I looked for emails too, and you're just not finding it. So probably a phone call to the superintendent's office and say, how can I communicate with the superintendent? It's probably going to be the only way. And I'd be more than happy to do that, but as a Chicagoan, you're probably going to get further than I am.
Yeah.
He's so far behind that iron curtain.
Yep. No, I like that. I like that advice. Bridget asked, let's see, relatively new, that they keep on doing something wrong and getting kicked off. I think the last one was in front of Lori Lightfoot's house, right? The last one, he was probably imbibing on the job in front. Lori Lightfoot being one of the prior mayors.
Oh,
But I
that's
think
right. That's right.
this is the next superintendent after that. I will tell you that this superintendent and Mayor Brandon Johnson, they're not friends. I don't think there's anything cordial about their relationship other than the fact that they have to work together at this point in time. But new is always a strange term. Usually, police chief. I'm going to say police chief, but I mean superintendent. It's not a long tenure job in big markets, right? You fall prey
It's
to
very it's very political. It's a very political, it's an appointed position, isn't it?
yeah. So it's the
Yeah.
mayor, right? In almost all of these cities, you work for the mayor, right? Or whatever, however they do a city manager, the top political executive branch.
And they usually change with the flavor change.
Yep, absolutely. So
So kind of in the
yeah,
reverse, you know how Scientology talks about finding the ruin? Well, I mean, you can always do that, but smacking somebody with the carrot usually isn't the best approach, or smacking them with a stick either. But finding the carrot, find what they treasure, find what they want, what can make them stay there longer and keeps their job longer and help them. That's the best way to do it.
yeah. And something else that this anecdotal, police chief is a job that you can get hired into. You don't need to ascend to police chief. And again, I'm using police chief in general, whether it's superintendent or police chief. And the idea that if I can help him have a good experience here where he is publicly well acclaimed, even though the mayor may not want him, that gives him clout for the next job that he's going to go after, right? So it makes he's willing to work with people to improve his image because that's what's going to help him in the next
I've
campaign.
even when I was trying to call the other day before I made those complaints, because I figured, okay, well, I can't get a hold of him to give him a carrot, I'll slap him. Sorry, it was just one of those.
Mhm.
But my comment was going to be, look, I was watching the board meeting last night, and I seen how proud the citizens of Chicago were of you. I saw that. I saw how they gave you flowers and brought you food. Seeing that, how can I go further with this? How can we make this to where, and honestly, I was going to bring up the boob gate and say, how can I make it to where you as the superintendent are not going to be embarrassed by this if it goes to court?
Right.
That's what I was going to say.
I like that. I like that. And again, it's challenging to get the ear of such a high-ranking official in these situations. But you're right. The honey and vinegar story, right?
Hmm.
It works out better one way than the other. So let's catch up on a couple of these comments because I don't want people to think that I don't want to interrupt you when we're going through this, but
It's okay.
I also let's see here. This was earlier, so Cher's asking us about charities, right? Or maybe making a statement that they do have to disclose what the percentage of administrative. The way that I always heard it was that there's an administrative fee, and that's the part that doesn't go back out to whatever the need was, or what the primary need of the organization was. So
Yeah, they do have to give a line item of where the dollars whether they come in from fundraising, whether they come in from whatever contributions, whatever, they do have to say that. They have to show how much administratively they spend, but they don't have to show the contributors. Like who, if it was Paul and Mona and Jane that gave us the money, they don't have to show that
Okay.
publicly. And before you go on more questions, I did see your question on my channel about the ZDT thing. I'm not really comfortable talking about ZDT, but
Okay.
I would give you maybe a private talk about that, but I don't want anything to do with that, gentleman.
That's fair
If you
enough.
want to call him a gentleman, I'll be nice.
So Jack of all trades, again, we see that question. It's an interesting question, but and Mona is freely available. If you send her an email, you're going to get a response. So
Yep.
so this one I think was just talking about the idea that when people get close to you, right, and especially if it's not a crowded location, why are people getting close to me? One of the things that you'll notice that I do these days is if any Scientologist comes near me, my very first statements are, if you come any closer, I will defend myself. Just so they're fully aware of the idea that I understand the law and that their encroaching, invading on my space is something that I am warning them about. You will oftentimes notice that I tend not to encroach on their space. When I'm following them at a distance of 20 feet, sometimes 60 feet. They can, it's the entire width of a street in order for them to get there. When they backtrack on me, I stand still. I do not want to be in motion when a Scientologist is coming past me. I want there to be no ambiguity on who moved into who. So anytime that they reverse course, I will either step off of their course or I will stand still just to avoid this particular situation.
Allah, that's why we're in the boob gate deal.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely, right.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I am going to. Yeah, this. Jack. We will talk about this one. There's, and I'm going to refer back to Shannon. I don't. The booklet is actually downstairs, but there's a booklet that's put out by a group of lawyers, and it's called Know Your Rights. It's probably 30 pages long, and I will say that it is a generalized Know Your Rights. It's a national pamphlet that's put out. Be very, very careful, right, that you should know what your local rights are just as much as your national rights. Quite honestly, when it comes to First Amendment, they should not be, the constitutional exclamation of what a First Amendment right is should not be further refined by a state or a city government. But there are going to be certain elements of that you're going to find that are challenging.
Right.
In
Well,
that
look
space.
at like there in Chicago, you can chalk. And I
Yep.
think, was it San Francisco or Sacramento? One of them, you can't chalk. So the
Yep.
cities are different.
Absolutely. The one that I always still I'm amazed by, when in LA they would bring a grill out and make hamburgers for everybody. I'm like, there's no way in the world that you're able to do that in Chicago. That the food trucks would go nuts on you. That the police would not let you do that. You can cook in an alley if it's your friends that are coming over. You can't go out into a public space and just decide that you're going to claim that public space and now you're going to be a food service for a large group of people in that public area. So
That's interesting.
if
Huh.
if you went to the beach, you'd be fine. But like if I tried to break out a grill on the sidewalk in front of Scientology, I would be shut down in a second on that. They're going
Huh.
to be food service and all of those kinds of things. The fire safety is going to be part of what's going on there.
Sure, sure. And you're taking away business from the hot dog stands. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me see. I'm going to read this one, but let's see. Are you going to get a reputation for what the Scientologist did? Yep. I'm not positive what reference this is. there are elements of getting a reputation that I'm not at all concerned about getting, right? Am I somebody who stands up for against human trafficking and child abuse? I don't mind having that reputation. Yeah, I'm just not quite sure what's going on here. I don't really care about what the people say to the police. I care a little bit more about how the police react to that. I will tell you that Scientology is conditioned to lie. One of the things that in the Lit Fest, the very first day, when the organizer came by the booth and I walked over there, I heard one of the publics, and we've later found out that he's a dentist. He tells the organizer that whenever anybody sits down, this guy tells them to get the hell out of that seat. And the
Sorry.
actual thing that I said was, do you know that's Scientology? And again, with how easily this person, and he has a professional degree. He's a retired dentist, but again, he was a professional member of society, and it was so easy for him to make such an egregious lie. It wasn't close to what I said. It wasn't an intent of what I said. It wasn't a bastardization of what I said. He just came out and said, every time somebody sits down here, he tells me to get the hell out of that seat. And those are the things when I go and I approach an officer talking to a Scientologist, it's these lies that I want to hear, because I will tell you that this is never something I would have prepared to defend myself against when the officer came back to me and said, hey, do you know what they're saying about you, right, over there? So again, I don't necessarily care what that dentist said. I do care what the reaction of the officer is in that situation. Are you taking it at
Right.
face value? Are you going to act upon what they just said? And if you're going to act upon that, I am going to defend myself, and I'm going to say, here's really what happened. But other than that, I don't ever really want to engage with the police, because it's the old idea that, right, self-snitching. Don't tell the police things that you're doing. Don't give them evidence, because everything you say will be used in a court of law. Right?
Exactly.
Cool. Let me kind of shut that one down. This, I think that we've talked about that. This is kind of what we're saying is this police board, right?
It's the Office of Inspector General,
Yep.
which is OIG, and yes, that is their job, to police the police.
Right. And I think that that then Adam came back, and I'm pretty sure this is really just the same question that we're going through right there. So, all right. So, were there any? Let's see here. Did not want to do that. How do I? We've now said that, right, that Superintendent Snelling speaks. The people who have commentary come up and give their commentary. Was there anything interesting out of any of the, were there people that came up with interesting stories or things that we might find interesting in this particular audience?
Well, the excessive use of force family that came up, and it was the mom and the dad and the sister, and that was I was crying over that. It was touching, very touching, because they did it in such a good way, a respectful way. There was several pastors that were talking about how nice actually it was during the DNC that they could actually. One lady came up and said, I even thought of going for a walk. It was so nice and quiet. I thought of going for a walk, but I decided not to, because then I'd have to like leave the house. But it was a thought, and it was very positive. Um, Constructive. There was a couple of constructive ones, but there wasn't a lot of people there to give public comment. Probably 8 or 9 maybe
Okay.
total. But as I said, one gave him a bouquet and one had food out there for him, and so it was a very positive. I'd be interested in going to a couple more just to see if that flavor continues. Maybe Snelling's hiring people to come give public comment. I don't know.
Right. Here's my floors bill. Here's my dry cleaning bill. So
Right.
I think Peter's bringing up one of the topics. Was this one of the topics that was?
It was,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it was his birthday the following day, and so they
Gotcha.
were talking about that.
So DNC, Democratic National Convention, and I'm gonna make a Paul's opinion. Your mileage may vary. Every time the Democratic National Convention comes to Chicago, it's compared to 1968. And in 1968, there were some really horrific police engagement with the rioters, with the protesters, and there were riots that were going on. But I'm going to say that the times were different then, right? Where it's either just before or just after MLK, RFK, JFK.
Mm.
I think Vietnam is still going on, or it might have just wound down. So it was a very, very tense time in America when that was happening. I did not just say to everybody that it's okay what happened there, but I get very upset when I hear people say, "Oh, this is just going to be like 1968." And it's like we've had several conventions since then. That
Yeah.
that was such an outlier. It's just a silly thing to kind of talk about in regards to that. And again, that's my opinion.
Bridge said that Superintendent Snelling has been labeled as son of the city. What do you mean by that, Bridge? What do you mean? Is it, I mean,
Oh,
I assume it's good, but what do you mean?
Hmm,
Okay,
I
cool,
like that. I like that.
cool.
Sorry, let me go ahead and pull those up real quick. Um, one of the things that I had done when the DNC was here, so if people don't remember, right, we had a visitor from California, or we had a touring professional protester here in the city, and I had what I would say was a rather positive engagement with him behind scenes. And I didn't go over to visit with him, but I wanted to go over towards the Union Park, which is where most of the staging area was for DNC at that point in time. And the my reaction was that before they actually start doing the protesting or the demonstration that in that space, there's a large police presence there, but they're all smiling and happy faced, and they're sitting on picnic tables. They're all having a good time together. And then I went over towards where the Palestinian groups were talking, and there were speakers set up, and they were all just talking, having a good time. It looked like they were out for a picnic, quite honestly. And then you see the news coverage of it, and I don't know if it's that they are that selective in what they're looking for, because again, if it bleeds, it leads type problems, or if everybody just puts their game face on when it's time to go marching, right? It did not look like a dangerous situation. I felt incredibly comfortable being there by myself in that space.
Huh. Share, that's funny. That's funny.
Nice. I do like that. Yes, folks, head over to Fat Grammy and please subscribe if you haven't already. And do you have playlists?
I don't have a playlist.
Okay.
I haven't put those together yet, but I do have videos on there.
Yes, I will say, do this. Just go through all your videos, put them on the same one, and call it Watch Hours. And
Oh, okay.
what we'll do is when we go to sleep at night, we're going to play your playlist
Oh, okay. Understood.
because we want to learn through osmosis in these situations. So earlier, I remember I'd said that sometimes you can be hired from, chiefs can be hired. You could be hired as the top cop in a city. It turns out that apparently Snelling came up through the the Chicago Police Department.
So one of the things that we did with LAPD is when we approached them through OIG because of their horrible reputation, and we ended up getting through, is offering them to come in and do, well, we brought it through the Trojan horse of disability, but bringing education and offering free education to their recruits, coming in and doing an hour session because they have what, 3 or 4 recruits a year. In Chicago, I know in LA they have 2, but offering, we know that training is a thing. We know it's expensive. We'll come in, and if you have people going through needing their training certificates, we'll come in and do an hour every couple of months.
Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to come in and do disability training or audit one training or how to do peaceful protest training rather than the rioting and the awfulness of it. So taking that course also,
Yeah.
offering education to them.
I like um, that I know where the training academy is at, and um, I I might have an in to some of the instructors over there. Now, again, I don't know that they get to make decisions or if it has to be made higher up and they implement those decisions. But that's definitely an avenue I want to chase. Um,
No, but just having the relationship,
yep.
even if you call and just make yourself known, that's a relationship. And when I lived in Anchorage for 31 years, and I was the Anchorage Police Department and the state troopers, I was their trainer for people with disabilities on how to deal with people with disabilities, etiquette, and how to handle people with disabilities. And I got to know a lot of cops that way.
Yep. Yeah, I do like, and I'm a naturally shy person, so it's when I'm in the business world, I act
Can I
very
roll my
differently.
eyes?
So when I'm in the business world, I understand what my role is, and I am a good glad hander and all of that. My natural inclination is absolutely not to do that, and it's very odd that I historically have always been natural leader, and I don't mean to say that as an arrogant statement in regards to what's going on, but people tend to gravitate towards me. But at the end of the day, we find out that, and then I select who our public speakers are, and I select who is going to be our PR person, who's going to be the front of what we're doing in this space, only so that I don't have to put myself in that particular position. I do want to go back and answer a question, and I'm gonna challenge something that Adam did answer this. I'm gonna be close on this. I might be slightly off on the perfect vernacular here, but by its very nature, the way the United States was built is that we wanted to be not religious. There is a separation of church and state, is the layman's term of saying it, but by its very definition, the state cannot support a church. The reason I say that is that the state does not, when I say state, United States government, Illinois, whoever, that any form of governmental agency, the state does not decide who is a religion. Religions get to raise their hand and say, I'm a religion. The state, and in the United States, it's the IRS, they have the ability to give tax exempt status, and that's as a charity in that space. But they don't get to say somebody is or is not a religion in this space. I know it's kind of parsing terms there, but it's very important for us to realize that they don't get tax exemption because they're a religion. They get tax exemption because they've shown somebody that they're a charity, and
Correct.
whether
Can
it's
I help you with that one just a
yes,
little bit?
yes, please
So
do.
a religion doesn't even need to file a tax return. A religion has 15 qualifications. I'm not going to go through all of them all, but they hold meetings. They have um, classes, blah, 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 blah. So there's
Okay.
15 different uh, designations to make you a religion. If you meet most of them, not all of them, but most of them, you're a religion and you don't even have to file taxes. You automatically get you can build
Ah,
buildings, you can do everything. Now, to be a charitable 501c3 organization, to have people be able to um, write it off from their taxes and to be tax exempt, that's where you need to be a charitable organization. You need to help those in need. You have to be a community organization. There's 5 or 6 of those. And that provides to where you're a 501c3. But you don't need 501c3 status to be a religion or a
right.
religious organization. Those are 2 different things.
Yeah. So and thank you for that. Um, the idea that there's this war chest that Scientology has, and that it is free from the burden. Is it free from the burden because it's a religion, or is it free from the burden because they have tax exempt status?
All of the above.
Okay.
The Church of Scientology itself isn't even an organization. It's not a 501c3. The Church of Scientology itself. Then you have RTC, CSI. There's over 50 of them that make this web of the charitable organizations, and they all feed up to, which includes IAS, the International Association of Scientologists. When you become a Scientologist, you pay your membership fee. That membership fee goes to RTC, CSI, blah, 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 all the way up to the organization. All of those, the film rights, everything else, all of the monies flow up to what's called the IAS Member Foundation. That's where all of their war chest is. And yeah, it's tax exempt because it's a membership organization. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
By the way, you got a little help from Cricket Cinema here.
Oh, thank you, Cricket. Thank you, thank you.
So that way, what happens is, so Cricket put together a list of videos from Mona, and then if you watch, even though you're going to watch the playlist on Cricket, you're really watching Mona's channel, and Mona's getting the hours there.
That's American Sign Language for thank you.
Excellent. I like that.
So yeah, even the money is sitting in, there's billions of dollars. There's 4 people that are the holders of that trust. Can't figure that out. I still haven't found out who that is. I know who it used to be, but I don't know who it is now. And basically, David Miscavige is the bibbity boppity boo of the whole fund, and it's billions of dollars.
Is this the mystical, like Swiss bank account type stuff that or
But
magic investment
it's
bankers?
held in Delaware. Yeah,
Okay,
it's a Delaware trust.
very nice. And by the way, while I'm not forward on the revoked Scientology's tax exempt status. As I mentioned the other night, that because I try to prevent recruiting doesn't mean that I'm against all these other elements, right? I want to revoke their tax exempt status. I just don't think that that's my strongest tool, and there are plenty of people in the community who I think stand for that much better. And it shows up in chats right. I love that people remember to put it in the chats, or right, the no more kids in Scientology, or the idea that we don't want child trafficking or child abuse and human trafficking to continue to exist in these
It
spaces.
takes all sorts of shapes and sizes to make the puzzle complete.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The analogy that I always have, just in the demonstration realm alone, right, is the idea that I have a different persona than a Pearl Snappy, and I use Pearl Snappy only because she was one of the first ones that was most vocal in this space. We have 2 different personas, but a band, the orchestra needs the piccolo and it needs the tuba, and that it doesn't work if there aren't all of the instruments that are there. If I was the only one doing this, it would be a very, very ineffective community, right? Or if everybody did it the way that I did it, it would be a very ineffective community. And that's my opinion, right? So let's see here.
Thanks for that information, Bridge. I'll kind of go back and listen to that. I'll find out what that means.
Nice. And I think that those two have, they snipe at one another. They have the press conferences or the press releases that are very poorly veiled, talking about one another in that space. Okay. What else do we have to talk about?
I don't know. Are we going to talk about Boobgate a little bit?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
So, hey, I've been doing a lot of talking. Um, this Monday we have a court date, and I'm sorry, I'm using a royal we there.
Tomorrow,
Yes,
tomorrow.
tomorrow. Nance Drew does have a court date. My understanding, and it's basically through public knowledge that we're seeing this, that she does know who her, I think her last community post, she does have a line on who the new lawyer would be in this situation. She has a group of people that are helping her with information and helping her with vetting and just sharing information on ideas on how the whole team can move forward in that space. My understanding is that she's raised some of the money that she will need in order to have a retainer for the new attorneys. But she doesn't have all of it, and without all of it, she'll probably have to ask for a continuance. And if she asks for a continuance, is just not something she wants. She's ready to be done with this, right? And by the way, she wants to go faster, not slower.
And by all
Yes,
means, I would be in the same
absolutely
predicament.
right. So what 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 she's looking for at this point is that can we fill out the rest of that? She did answer two important questions on her community page. I don't want to say those questions because I am going to paraphrase them and I'm afraid I'll be wrong. But if you feel comfortable talking about what those two questions, do you remember what she had put on there? Okay.
You lost me on that one.
All right. So she put on her community page basically, do you have somebody else? And roughly, do you have somebody else? And is there going to be a return of funds? Does the outgoing lawyer have to return funds in that? And the short answer was that even if he does return, and he doesn't have to return all of it because he did consume some of it, he did work,
Right.
right?
He did
in that
use some
space.
of it, sure.
That it probably won't come back in time, right? In this particular situation. So
Right.
her attorneys, the incoming attorney is probably not going to say, well, oh, I'll take an IOU from the outgoing attorney in that situation. Attorneys, I don't know if you've ever watched this, but especially when you're talking about criminal, and by the way, remember, she's up for this is a criminal charge, not a
This
civil
is
charge.
criminal charge, right?
As a criminal charge, most defense attorneys want everything up front because if things go wrong, you might be in a place where you can't make
That's a
return
good
money,
point.
right?
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
You never have a guy defending a murder case that oh, you can owe it to me. No, I want all the money now because if things don't go our way, you're just going to jail and you're never going to pay me.
Right. Is Nancy still on?
She might. We'll see if she kind of.
Because I know a question Style Audit 1A had is, does she want in-person support? And I know she was thinking of doing a Zoom hearing or not. I didn't know what was happening with that, but that probably would be a good question to get answered.
Yes, and I would say that please that if Nance decides to, if she's still in and she responds to that, that's great. I would definitely say, don't take it upon yourself to answer it for her in these situations. That please, if you can, before you make a decision, try to make sure that you're getting some kind of commentary or feedback from her in this situation. It can be overwhelming. It's the idea that you don't want too many voices in a given room because it can become confusing and distracting in that situation. So
So
Nance,
Nancy just answered us.
yep, let me put that on there.
She's going to do Zoom, so she will be not at the courthouse. I assume, Nancy, that means that you don't want people there at the courthouse. And Zoom will depend on the funds that come in. The amount I need is on my community page.
Yeah. So and I think on both channels we've been I know that on my channel we've been putting the links back to Nance's page. So
Yeah.
I assume
Christy, your question of how strongly do we believe Nancy's outgoing attorney is leaving for medical reasons? Who the hell knows? Who the heck knows? I mean, he could have been compromised. He could have not. Maybe he really was. But all you're going to do is just drive yourself nuts trying to figure that out. That's
Yep.
what are you going to do?
I will say that I've been in conversations with the person. That, and by the way, these are in front of you know, that Nance has invited me to be in the area, and these are in the courthouse. This isn't, we go to lunch and we talk to the attorney. I'm going to say that he definitely felt stand up. He felt knowledgeable about what was going on in this situation. I'm going to say that I think he was surprised by how easily Scientology was able to keep this continuing in this space. And my gut, this is Paul's opinion, matters nowhere else in the universe. He thought that this was going to be a quick in and out process, right? And it doesn't become that. And now you can then start going down different paths. Did he get pressured by Scientology? You know, is he getting pressured by Sakela? Is he just tired? Being tired is actually a thing, and maybe it is that he thought this was just going to be a quick little last hurrah before he left. So there's really no way to tell, and I agree with what Mona was saying, that if yeah, you could guess a million times. It's not really until he speaks up. Now Nance does say that I would say that my understanding is he didn't respond to the desires of the way Nance wanted to take the case.
Right.
And as we're seeing there, right, he maybe became invisible or swallowed his tongue in regards to some of those things. So, okay. And then what Nance is saying is right. If she does get enough funds, she'll go in person. Let's see here. Oh, sorry. I wasn't correct on something.
Yeah, and Chrissy, I agree. You know, it's a good question. There's nothing wrong with questioning. It's just you're going to beat yourself up trying to figure it out.
Yep.
You know, you can assume, but until you really find out, unless you're a fly on the wall and really hear the true conversations that are happening, or, you know, get really picky and go, well, show me your receipts of having a heart attack. Show me, you know, and
Yeah.
that's just useless time spent in the world.
What will
So
be
your questions are
interesting,
valid.
yeah, 100%. And Nance, I apologize. I didn't mean to. Hopefully, I didn't say anything egregiously incorrect. But the one of the things, and again, I know all of my law from Boston legal and LA law and all of those elements. Oh, okay, gotcha. So it was that he would agree, but he was kind of dragging his feet on some of that. I know that discovery was a challenge in some of those pieces. Thank you for clarifying that. What I always felt that if you were a lawyer, the judge had to dismiss, like allow you to no longer be the lawyer. I can't remember why that is, but it makes sense that you can't let somebody be unrepresented in that point in time. But I don't know if it's an obligation that he needs to get permission from the judge to resign or not. So
Yeah, that's my experiences from Law and Order too. So
yeah.
I have no idea.
So get Jimmy Smits, and we're gonna be fine. I will tell you that I think that it was out of the Danny Masterson case after the fact that the prosecuting attorney said that it was very challenging for them to get a second chair because people were fearful of the reach of Scientology, right? Now,
Agus Basher, I have to tell you, it wasn't from effort of trying, because I know I and a zillion other people have been trying to find an appropriate attorney that will take
Yeah.
the case. It's not from the lack of effort of trying whatsoever. And poor Nancy, I feel sorry for Nancy having to deal with it. Because it wasn't just missing.
Yeah. No,
Oh, that's
this,
a nice little freeze.
yeah. You're looking, it looks like you're trying to
Sorry,
look behind
guys.
your phone. Um, yeah, Nisa, I agree that it shouldn't have made it to get that. When I talk about rational minds should have come to conclusion for very quickly. Oh, great, incidental contact, great, move along. What I really took umbrage to is in the very first court appearance, after it had been dismissed because Chadwick hadn't shown up, that Joe Cicala, the lawyer and the founder of Dream Exchange, he went to the state's attorney and said, "These people are outside my church protesting all the time," and it's like, yeah, that's probably a red flag. Oh, hopefully we'll get her back quickly. That should have been a red flag to the attorney that, well, why are people protesting? And why should I worry about the fact that people are protesting? It's an American right to be able to protest. Yeah. Let's see here. All right. Welcome back.
Sorry about that, folks. It's what happens when you live in the country.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get good internet and sometimes not.
I agree. I'm going to make a statement here. Folks, please do not try to discover who the attorney is. By the way, the attorney can round robin and all of that. It's really not a good idea to try to unveil a state's attorney in any kind of case while it's ongoing. You can only do harmful things to any of the participants in the situation. So you never want to put the bee in the bonnet in that situation. So I'll just say that. I will tell you that I saw different state's attorneys every time I walked into that courtroom on the same case. So. And then, yeah, with a little bit of the talk about the yes, the reach of Scientology. And again, I agree that the reach of Scientology is no longer as good as it used to be, but it's probably better than almost everybody in this chat, right? So their reach is better than most of us, but it's nowhere near where it used to be, and they can't pull the shenanigans like they used to do with the reporter that they tried to get on international terrorism charges. So, let's see. Yeah.
We must have a storm coming in. You're sending it to us, so.
Yeah, it's that it started at about 7 this morning with just drizzle, but it looked like, and it's been continuous all day long. We haven't had storms, but we've had rain all day long. So, and yes, sending it right across the lake, getting it over to you, just like our winter snows.
Yeah.
So let's see the long and short of this, and again, the one of the biggest reasons I want this to be over is I want Nance to be able to talk again. I want her, whether or not she comes out and protests again, great, but that's not the element. The idea that she is either legally not allowed to or inferenced not allowed to talk. I don't like when people are silenced, right? And this is a story
Right.
that I think we're all interested in regards to that. And great, out of curiosity, I want to know this. But I don't like the idea of a gag order, whether it's explicit or implicit in this situation. It just doesn't seem American.
And if it was a gag order because she sliced somebody or took a bat and smashed their knees or something to that effect, I can understand that. Put a gag order on it. You're not going to want to have a big uproar in the community. But when you're talking about a gag order for her boob brushing against somebody else, this is stupid.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah,
yeah, it's embarrassing.
it is. And I will tell you that I do want to your point, Larry Snelling does not ever want this to be a news article about the Chicago police arresting somebody because their breasticle touched another person, which it's only his words. You know, the camera can't have shown that that was happening. It's really what somebody says.
Mm-mm.
So it's an allegation at this point in time. That's what you want to show that your police department is enforcing right now. So it will be a terrible source of embarrassment for the higher ups in the Chicago Police Department as this moves forward.
It was, and that's what I did I tried to find information for Snelling, Mr. Snelling, and then said, well, what the heck, I'm just going to file an OIG complaint and
Yep.
hopefully she wouldn't have to. Oh, cool.
Love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
Again, if this is something that you can get behind, if you have the means, if you have the wherewithal, if you have a conviction in this space, please head over to Nance Drew's page. Both of the mods have been putting it in on both the channels. She's got, and again, remember that this is a speed. There's a need for finances quickly, so things on the link tree are going to be things that happen more quickly than things that happen in YouTube world. YouTube world, you're talking about 60 days before any of the monies go across, and they have a pretty painful tax in that space. So if you can, go over, support her. She's got some information on that. She has been showing much more transparency in regards to here's where we're at, here's where the funds are. I think she's been very clear on how she's intending to spend those funds in this space. So, yeah, head over, help her out if that's something you can get behind. Yeah. I do remember
Nice.
when that reporter. I remember when the reporter was in the. So yes, I remember when this reporter came to the courthouse.
Yeah, no violating gag orders. Gotcha. Just
Yeah. You know, Desert Dog, I can't tell you what I won't be correct, but it's going to be some form of assault, right? Whether I don't know if it's assault or battery. I know there's a different, like one of them is the implied going to happen and one is it already happened. But that's why it's a criminal. That's why it's risen to the level of a criminal complaint in this space. Simple battery charge. Okay. And again, it's one of those things that if two people bumped on a sidewalk, you would say, "Excuse me," and you would go on about your day, and that's all that would ever happen. Let's say you couldn't get to the point of saying, "Excuse me." When the police arrived, 99% of the time, the police would be pushing both sides really hard to say, "Just go apologize." Right?
You know, one thing I'm sure that Discovery would show, and I can almost bet on this. If somebody wants to bet me $100, I could use propane money. Is that they tried to make it an aggravated assault because of the religion and religious hate. Betcha.
Yep. Oh, no doubt that would have been an attempt on the elevation. And I'm sure
Mhm.
that's what those are some of the little tidbits that Sakala is kind of putting in the ear of the state's attorney
Yep.
when they're there. Yeah. Yeah, Kathy, I don't think that there's been a lot of discovery, that would be something that came across in the discovery. So, and I'm not close enough to, again, I just want to assure everybody that while Nance and I are fine acquaintances and everything of that nature, I am not privy to everything that's going on there, nor should I be, nor do I have a right to be. I don't want him to think anything of that nature. I try to help her and I try to support her when I can. That's all I can do. And I've said that if you're somebody who wants to demonstrate and protest here in Chicago, I'm going to be somebody that wants to stand next to you, right? In that space. So
Right. Nancy just put on there that to Mistress Managed. I'm told no, as it's too political for the state's attorney to drop it, as they are being pressured by Scientology. Joe Sakala, the father of the executive director of the org, talks to the state's attorney.
yep,
And that's been witnessed.
absolutely.
That was my
There's
second complaint.
yeah, there have been several times where it might. Oh, I know. It was Juanita. Juanita stayed back in court on the very first appearance when we came out, and she was the one that was hearing Joe Scala talk to the state's attorney afterwards. I heard Joe Scala talking about other dates. I heard Joe Scala saying, well, if I don't have your phone number here, why don't we share phone numbers now? So that he doesn't have a long history with this particular state's attorney, but I'm sure he has a history with the office. And the idea that you're going to exchange emails and you're going to exchange phone calls. So yeah, there's pressure going on here, whether it's amicus or not, right? The idea that it seems inappropriate that somebody can have that much power and influence into this type of a situation. If on its face, I hate that the idea there's political pressure. If on its face there's no crime, then on its face there's no crime, right?
Right.
It's a shame. I want it to be over with. By the way, I'm the 10th person in this that wants to be. Yeah, Nance wants it to be over with, just the same as any of us do in this space. I will tell you that I do want to make public. I do not want it to be acceptable that states' attorneys and law enforcement think that they can take sides in these kinds of situations without suffering, right, the court of public opinion.
Without somebody
right?
noticing,
Yeah.
taking notice and saying it is not right.
Absolutely, right. And those are when I'm out there protesting, and I'm sure you've all heard it before, I have no care or concern of any of their beliefs, their philosophy, any of that, right? That's going on is fine. It's the idea that I don't think that they should have free reign to treat people in an abusive nature. That if I were to do the same thing, I would be in jail. Right.
Exactly.
So, just ridiculous.
I mean, if people want to go and, bow down to or hold high and worship pink chameleons, by all means, go do pink chameleons. But if you're going to make a kid eat it and get poisoned by it, that's a different thing. You
100%.
can't do illegal activities under
Yep.
the cloak and behind the curtain of religion.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that it might be an interesting thread to pull on is the idea that is Joe Sakala doing this to benefit the Church of Scientology, or is he using his cachet as a founder of a stock exchange to is that how he's pressuring the state's attorney, and does that become an even worse entanglement than the religious entanglement or potentially religious entanglement?
Right.
By the way, I am not suited to pull on that thread, but if we know people that can pull on that thread, let's pull on that thread too. Yeah, what else do we have here?
Janet, oh, I'm sorry. She was asking Desert Dog, curious as to why Nance should be embarrassed. I would just be embarrassed by how that they're treating me, how the police department treated me, how our justice system is treating me. Not necessarily that she should be embarrassed by what she did because she didn't do anything wrong, but it's embarrassing to be placed into a situation like that.
Yeah. And I might have missed a prior comment, but he was saying that everybody except for Nance should be embarrassed.
Oh, okay, okay.
So,
Sorry.
and that's, it could have easily been misread by anybody in that situation. My hope is that's really what's going on here. And again, that you're right. The embarrassment is the idea that you were taken away in handcuffs in a very public display.
Yeah.
And that is a statement, right? They call it a perp walk, right? There's an intent behind that process. It is a slanderous, slander is probably not the right term, but it is a slur upon your nature why is that person in handcuffs, right? It is
Yeah.
very hard to unsee that. That's, we know that you show up to court in an orange jumper with body shackles on, the judge has a different feeling about you than you come in with a nice, well-groomed, with a suit and a nice, well-groomed hair and face, right? All right. I don't think that I've got much else. What have you got, Mona?
No, I think we're good. Thank you for talking about the police board meeting. There is a calendar of events. It looks like they only have the board meeting once a month, and it looks like they have city council once a month. They have a police, fire, and safety joint meeting coming up. I think I sent it to you. It's on the 26th. And those are all, they look like they have them viewable online, but you can only be there to give comment there.
Okay. Now, the 23rd, I won't be able to make either, but again, and I sometimes need to be treated like a child.
The 26th, you mean?
The 26th, yeah, the 26th,
Yeah.
I won't be able to be there. I'll be out of town. Anybody that can help remind me of when these go on, and if you can remind me, I'm more than happy to be the person on the ground if there are messages that we can convey in that space. So that would be great. I love that we've got a room raid going on, and we're going to send the room raid over to Fat Grammy's playlist.
Oh, thank you.
How close are you? What are your hours at? If you or how close are you?
I think I'm at 2,600,
Nice. All right.
right around there. So not too far off.
Let's go get her some hours. Let's make sure that we've got an answer in our thoughts, and if you have an ability, let's act upon that. See if you can, if you've got the wherewithal to reach into your pockets and help Nance out. Please head over to Nance's channel. She's got a link tree. It'll help you how to guide her, and she's been very transparent on where we're at. I use the word "we" too much, and I try to think of us as a community in that. But do whatever you can to. She's done whatever she can to help everyone understand where the funds stand at. So,
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Much love.
all right, everybody, you take care. I will see you later. Let's head over to Fat Grammy's private playlist. Thank you.